Living in Oakwood Heights had been mostly peaceful for the 3 years since I moved in. Sure, our homeowners association, HOA, had a reputation for being strict about things like lawn maintenance and seasonal decorations, but I had never had any real issues until Meredith Langley decided to run for HOA president. I should have seen the warning signs when she began her campaign 6 months ago, going door-to-door armed with a meticulously organized binder full of community improvement proposals and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Meredith was the textbook definition of an HOA enforcer. Perfectly styled, auburn hair, designer athleisure wear, and an air of authority that could probably be detected from outer space. "We need to restore Oakwood Heights to its former glory," she declared at the community meeting where she announced her candidacy. "Some residents have been allowing standards to slip, and that ends now." The way her gaze lingered on my house, with its newly installed solar panels, told me exactly who she considered to be part of the problem. The solar panels had been a major investment, but they were already proving their worth with reduced energy costs and environmental benefits. I had followed every rule, obtained all the necessary permits, and received official HOA approval before installation. So, when Meredith won the election by promising to modernize our community guidelines, I didn't think much of it. That changed the morning I found a violation notice taped to my front door. "Dear resident," the letter began, its official letterhead only making its passive-aggressive tone worse. "It has come to our attention that your unauthorized solar installation violates our new architectural guidelines. You have 72 hours to remove these unsightly additions or face daily fines." I immediately called the HOA office, but Meredith's new assistant informed me that the president was too busy to discuss individual violations. Frustrated, I marched over to Meredith's pristine white door that evening, armed with my approval documentation and what remained of my patience. "Oh, it's you," Meredith said when she opened the door, her expression souring as if she had just caught a whiff of something unpleasant. "I suppose you're here about the violation notice." "Yes, Meredith. I have all the documentation proving that these panels were legally approved before installation. You can't retroactively deny permission." She waved a manicured hand dismissively. "Those approvals were granted under the old board. Our new guidelines clearly state that visible solar installations detract from community aesthetics. Surely, you understand the importance of maintaining our property values." "The panels are staying," I stated firmly. "They were legally approved, and you can't change the rules after the fact. If you persist with these fines, I'll have no choice but to challenge them legally." Meredith's eyes narrowed. "Well, if that's your attitude, I suppose we'll have to handle this officially. Don't say I didn't try to be reasonable." She shut the door in my face, leaving me fuming on her immaculate doorstep. Over the next few days, I documented everything and consulted with a lawyer friend who specialized in property law. He confirmed what I already knew. Meredith's attempt to force the removal of legally approved installations wouldn't hold up in court. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The first power outage happened on a Tuesday afternoon while I was working from home. Initially, I assumed it was just a random fluctuation, but when I stepped outside to check my electrical panel, my blood boiled. The lines connecting my solar system to the power grid had been deliberately cut. As I stood there, staring at the severed cables, my neighbor Ben rushed over. "Hey, is your power out too?" The whole street just went dark. That's when I realized something Meredith hadn't considered in her rush to enforce her new rules. My solar setup was connected to the neighborhood grid through a sophisticated net metering system. By cutting my lines, she hadn't just disabled my panels. She had created a surge that knocked out power to the entire block. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, watching as more neighbors emerged from their homes, confused and frustrated. As I waited for the police to arrive, I couldn't help but smile slightly. Meredith had just made a massive mistake. And the best part? My security cameras had caught everything. The responding officers weren't just concerned about vandalism. They were alarmed by the potential public safety implications. Officer Ramirez spent a solid hour taking statements and reviewing my security footage, which clearly showed Meredith, in her designer yoga pants and tennis shoes, approaching my electrical panel with industrial wire cutters. This is actually a pretty serious situation, Officer Ramirez explained. Tampering with electrical infrastructure isn't just vandalism. It's a public safety issue. Since this affected multiple households, the charges could be even more severe. As utility trucks arrived, their flashing lights illuminating the growing crowd, I spotted Meredith pacing behind her living room curtains. The first battle had been fought, but the war was far from over. The next morning, I walked into the police station, exhausted from helping neighbors document damages. Detective Lee, a no-nonsense woman with sharp instincts, was already waiting for me. "We've reviewed your security footage," she began, sliding a cup of coffee across the desk. "And we have statements from the utility company confirming the extent of the damage. Ms. Langley didn't just affect your home. She caused a cascading failure that impacted critical infrastructure." I nodded, handing her my folder. "I have statements from 23 neighbors so far. Mrs. Clarkson had to throw out everything in her fridge. The Jeffersons lost their entire fish tank when the pumps failed. And the Mitchell's basement flooded because their sump pump shut down." Detective Lee raised an eyebrow as she flipped through the papers. "This is very thorough. We're also concerned because there's a resident on your street who relies on powered medical equipment. Fortunately, their backup generator kicked in, but this could have been much worse." Just then, her phone buzzed. After a brief conversation, she looked up, her expression neutral but satisfied. "Ms. Langley is being brought in for questioning now. Given the evidence, her lawyer has advised her to cooperate fully." As if on cue, Meredith's voice echoed down the hallway, significantly less authoritative than usual. "This is ridiculous. I was simply enforcing HOA guidelines. That person was clearly in violation." "Ms. Langley," a male voice interrupted, "I strongly advise you to stop talking until we're in the interview room." I couldn't help but smile slightly as I heard Meredith's heels clicking away. The next few days unraveled even more shocking discoveries about Meredith's past, leading to one of the most dramatic HOA meetings in Oakwood Heights history. The fallout from her reckless decision changed our community forever. And as for my solar panels, they're still here, shining brighter than ever. Every time I receive my reduced energy bill, I think about mailing Meredith a copy. But I don't need to. Living well is the best revenge.